Welcome! Today we're building the CircuitMess ByteBoi. In this guide, we're going to go over how to assemble the CircuitMess ByteBoi from start to finish. You can do it! You'll also learn how to use some tools along the way. Age group. This product was designed for ages 11 and up, but it's highly recommended to have parent supervision for soldering and assembly. What you'll learn. The ByteBoi's main goal is to educate and motivate you to learn something new or to brush up on some skills that you already had. What does the kit come with? Let's open it up and find out. Inside, you'll find a USB-C cable, a bag of components, the main PCB, a lithium Pro battery, front acrylic casing, 4 back acrylic casings, and a bag of colorful button tops. Let's have a look at what we have here. Now your parts might look a little different from mine. I originally had them all separate, but I did a build video and that video actually got corrupted and lost, so I had to do a reshoot. How to use a soldering iron. Check the links in the description below for tips on how to use a soldering iron. Have you used a soldering iron before? If so, then you can skip this part. We'll cover 6 rules to keep in mind when soldering. Number 1, never inhale dust or fumes when soldering. When soldering, the solder creates a bit of smoke, and it's never good to get that into your lungs. Make sure you're working in a well-ventilated area. Number 2, never touch the tip of the soldering iron. Even if the soldering iron is unplugged or powered off, there's still a chance that it could still be hot. Number 3, clean the iron. The sponge is your friend. When soldering, there can be a buildup of solder that accumulates on the end of your soldering iron. Use your sponge to wipe that away. Number 4, check your solder joints twice at least. We're all human. Sometimes we make mistakes. Go over your solder joints to make sure that they're all good, to prevent any damage to it. Number 5, know how much solder is needed. Too much solder can be a bad thing, and too little solder can create insufficient joints. Make sure that your solder joints look like little volcanoes. Number 6, don't leave any residual solder on the board. Your solder should only be on the parts that you're going to be using to solder. Any leftover solder could cause malfunctions in your device. Section A, soldering your first part. Before we get started on this one, make sure to remove the battery. While soldering while the battery's still in there could cause malfunctions in your device. Alright, grab a button from the components bag and put it in the holes. The pins should hook around the holes and hold it in place. Make sure it is nice and flat against the board. Make sure you wiggle the button and push it down in order to get it in the right spot. Once it's in position, plug in your soldering iron and turn it on. It should only take a minute to heat up. Make sure you turn the temperature up to 250 degrees. To solder, tin the tip of your soldering iron and then place your soldering iron on the pad and beside the pin. Make sure it's touching both the pin and the pad. Heat it up and slowly feed solder into it. Remember, we only want enough solder to cover the pad and create a volcano-like shape. If you have too much, use the sponge to wipe off your soldering iron and clean some of it off. If you have too little, add a little bit more. Do a quick check to see that your joints are all soldered correctly and that there's enough solder on all those pads. After you're finished that, do all the rest of the buttons. Section B, soldering on the switch. Place the switch in the holes down here at the bottom under the D pad. Make sure that the switch is in the off position. This is to ensure that when we plug in our battery, it doesn't short circuit. Flip the device over and start soldering the pads. Now with these pads, they're so close together that bridging may occur. That's when solder flows from one pad over to the other, just like this. To remove that, all you have to do is clean off your soldering iron and put your soldering iron tip on there. The solder will stick to the soldering iron, which then you can wipe off on the sponge, and you just repeat until it's cleaned. Section C, plugging in the speaker and battery. Once you've double checked all your solder joints, you're ready for your speaker and your battery. Your speaker and battery have the same type of connector. Take your speaker and locate the ridge that's on the top of the connector. Next, place it inside the speaker joint. It's the topmost one underneath the reset button. Push it in all the way and it should clip into place. Do the same with the battery next. Now comes the moment of truth, the testing. Section D, testing your hardware. Turn your device on. If it works, you'll be greeted with a screen that looks like this. If it doesn't, you'll have to go back in and check your solder joints. This is your test program. Whenever you press a button, it should light up green. So go ahead, test all your buttons to ensure that you did a proper job soldering. Now, your A button will be your continue button, and finally, when you press A again, you should have all of your LEDs flashing red, green, and blue. This also lists the contents on your SD card. Great job! Now we can play some games. Section E, casing up your device. The first thing we have to do is unplug the battery. We're going to have to pass it through a hole in the first layer of the case. Take your acrylic pieces and peel off the protective film so they're see-through and there's no blue color on them anymore. Find the first backing piece, which is the one with lots of holes. The second back piece looks like a little person. The third back piece has a rectangle and an oval. Back piece number 4 has 6 small circles and 1 large circle for the speaker. The first front piece has a large rectangle in the middle for the screen. The second front piece has a square and a rectangle. And the third one has a clover and 2 small holes. Take the first back piece and take your battery and thread it through the small hole here. After that's done, we're just going to connect the battery in place. And now we need to pull the speaker through one of the holes and line it up so everything sits nicely. Next, take the second back piece and put it so the oval is to the right. You're going to thread the speaker through the hole here and the battery through the rectangle. Once we have the case lying flat, we need to guide the battery wire through this little track and put the battery in the rectangle, then do the same with the speaker. Just like so. Now is a good time to take the brass stands and slide them into the grooves. Grab the third piece and line it up so the rectangle goes over the battery and the oval goes over the speaker, and finally lay the fourth piece over the speaker hole. Now we're going to take these small screws, not the big ones, the small ones. Now screw them into the brass stands, make sure that they're lined up nicely, and screw until you start feeling a little bit of tension, then you stop screwing. Over tightening can cause the case to break or the screws to strip. off for some personalized customization. Pick which button caps you want to put on, and push them on to the button contacts. Keep pushing down until you hear a click, and they should be on properly. Now it's time to peel off that screen sticker. Oh yeah! Grab the first acrylic plating for the front, which is the big one with the big rectangle in the middle. Place it on top. And let's clean off any dust that might have gotten onto the screen from the acrylic casing or just any dust around. Might as well clean up the acrylic casing too. On over top of the buttons, and finally the last one, which has the clover shape. Alright, the front is now set. Let's grab those long screws and put them in place. Remember, don't tighten too much. Now if you want, you can put the lanyard on. This is completely optional. Section F, playing some games. You did it! Now it's time to sit down, relax, and play some games. CircuitMess sent me this device to do a build video for it and a review. All these words are my own thoughts and opinions about this product. Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about the ByteBoi, CircuitMess's new bigger brother to the Nibble. So the main difference is clearly the size. The ByteBoi is quite a bit bigger than the Nibble. Screen size is an upgrade as well. It's got what closely looks to about 3 times as big of a screen. The dimensions are up here. Bigger button layouts. Basically, they've gone bigger on all fronts. It swaps out the 3 AAA batteries for a 600 milliamp lithium pro battery. Another upgrade is that they've gone from a USB micro to a USB-C adapter. Another awesome feature is that it has a built-in SD card reader. So with the Nibble, you had to plug it in, open up circuit blocks, and upload things through there. Whereas with this, having a SD card, all you need to do is load up your bin files onto here. You should be able to play those games. Another enhancement is that the ByteBoi has a speaker, whereas the Nibble had a little buzzer, so it would buzz rather than actually play music. And finally is a screen protector. The Nibble did not have a screen protector. I did a video making my own screen protector here, but the ByteBoi has a built-in one. It just uses an acrylic case as the screen protector, so that's awesome. As for the build, the ByteBoi I found a lot easier to build. So part of it is the difference in size on the solder points. So the Nibble has quite small solder points on the back, whereas the ByteBoi had like very, very forgiving, wider solder points. It's a lot easier to get that contact with those points, and actually heat up the pads enough to solder them. The fiddliest part I found with the build itself was the second layer on the acrylic backing. Basically, that's where you're sort of organizing these wires for the battery and the speaker. It was just a little bit fiddly. Nothing too difficult, just takes time and patience to do it. As for the actual soldering, There wasn't nearly as much soldering on the ByteBoi as there was on the nibble. The nibble had your 7 buttons. It had the screen that you had to solder to it. It had the power switch, and then on the back it also had, or sorry, on the front it also had the power pack that you had to solder to it. So overall there's more soldering involved with the nibble. I found that the nibble was a bit of a harder build. It could be that when I built the nibble I was a lot less experienced in soldering. It was pretty much my first time soldering electronics for the most part. And now working on the ByteBoi, I've actually soldered many things, so I'm a lot more experienced dealing with solder joints, and I'm a lot more comfortable with it. So overall, the build I found was a lot easier on the ByteBoi, and everything about it is sort of just a strict upgrade in my opinion. The only thing is, if you're buying a kit, the nibble is more complete. Basically, it's a all-in-one package. You have your soldering iron and all your tools that come with it, whereas the ByteBoi assumes that you need to have a soldering iron in order to do it. CircuitMess does supply kits if you order from there. They also have deals where if you buy 5 packs of the stem box, you'll get a free soldering iron kit. So you can go through them, or if you have your own personal soldering iron kit, you can use yours. The ByteBoi comes with an awesome feature that I think is amazing, and CircuitMess should do this with all their products from now on, which is a testing feature. So basically, when you run the ByteBoi for the first time, it has a sort of test script to make sure that all your connections are set. It checks all the buttons. It checks all the buttons. It checks obviously the screen. If you can't see anything, it won't work. It tests the LED indicators on the back and the speaker as well. So I think that's just a neat feature. It just sort of confirms whether you did it properly or not. If you're not getting the green lights for those buttons, then that means you probably have to jump back in there and do some more resoldering. And it's just a nice feature to have that the nibble did not. Overall, I'd recommend this. It makes an awesome Christmas gift. It's robust enough that it has a bunch of games on it. You sort of get started on it. I had really not too many issues with it this time. The build quality is great. The only thing, if I'm nitpicking, is that some of the edges on the acrylic is a bit rough, just kind of chipped, but I've worked with acrylic before, and it's a bit of a finicky thing to work with, so it's just a tiny minor nitpick about it. But overall, I think it's great. I love that they give you customized buttons. I sort of went with a Game Boy look with the black D-pad and the red A-B buttons. And I'm excited to see what everybody else makes. So that's it for now. Take care, and good luck building.
Bite.